My name is Emily, and I'm a 44-year-old woman after a long, exhausting day in the office. I found myself in front of the office. I found myself in front of the bathroom mirror, pausing for a moment as I peeled off my work clothes. First, my skirt, then unbuttoning. My blouse I stood there in just my bra and lace stockings, catching my own reflection. It had been a long time since. I'd really looked at my like that really, see myself, and for a second I felt a spark. I hadn't felt in a while. I worked hard, and I kept myself in shape, but somewhere along the way I had stopped thinking of myself as desirable. I was lost in my own thoughts, appreciating the moment and the soft feel of lace against my skin, tracing delicate patterns along my waist and shoulders. The quiet, almost meditative state was soothing after the long day, and I barely registered the distant sound of the main door opening and closing. But then suddenly, I heard footsteps coming down the hallway, quick and purposeful. Before I had a chance to gather myself, the bathroom door opened, and there stood Daniel. He froze wide-eyed. We both remained motionless for a few seconds, taking in the spectacle. I could see the astonishment in his eyes as he stood, there clearly taken off guard and wondering whether he should turn away or say something. Immediately stammered an apology and fumbled to lock the door. As she attempted to go, but I startled myself by calling out gently, "No need to be shy." There was a burst of audacity, a unique confidence that came from somewhere. I couldn't pinpoint. Maybe it was just the feeling of being seen, of being vulnerable without having to hide it. Daniel's eyes were filled with wonder and astonishment, which just encouraged me. I stretched for his arm, stopping him from closing the door. Completely in agent calm voice, I told him he didn't have to leave. There was a spark of excitement in the air, a kind of mutual understanding that somehow felt natural and real. I mentioned to him that I'd noticed his curiosity and his fascination. Even before this moment, he looked back at me, almost speechless, as if trying to process what was happening, a mixture of intrigue and amazement on his face. And before I knew it, it was as if we were both testing the waters. But with each passing second, the hesitancy faded, replaced by a mutual trust and curiosity. It was as if time had stopped and nothing else existed in that little place. My fingers made their way into his hair, softly tangling it and drawing him closer. There was something about how he gripped my hands and moved gently along my back that felt calming and exciting, all at once. His touch was both careful and confident, exploring in a way that made him feel grounded and safe, as if he wanted to understand each detail. Every movement. Like a quiet exchange of trust. Between us, I caught sight of our reflection in the mirror behind us, and it heightened the moment, making it feel even more intense, more real. Their reflection captured the vulnerability and warmth that surrounded us, adding a layer of awareness that made it feel more than just a fleeting moment. His hands were gentle, yet intentional, moving along my waist and lingering over the thellus fabric of my stockings, sending a quiet thrill through me. There was something genuine and connected in the way he held me, a quiet energy that filled the room, making everything feel meaningful and lasting. After a moment, we moved from the small space in the bathroom to my bedroom, where everything felt more comfortable, like a quiet sanctuary that held the warmth of our shared connection. As Daniel inside, and as he followed, I felt a blend of anticipation and calm, a feeling of trust and openness that made everything feel natural. The way he looked at me with a softness that seemed both curious and earnest reassured me that this moment was more than a passage encounter. It was a sincere shared experience. I took a gentle lead, guiding him to sit on the edge of the bed, a seat beside him. We continued to explore that warmth between us, sharing soft lingering kisses and light touches. I let my hands trace his shoulders and his neck, following the curve of his jaw as I took in each detail, and he heard my movements with his hands moving along my arms, feeling the texture of the lace and the warmth of my skin. There was no need to rush. We simply enjoyed the quiet, easy rhythm that unfolded between us like a mutual dance of sorts. The air was filled with a palpable energy that grew steadily, but there was no sense of pressure. It was more about discovery and appreciating each other in a way that felt honest and vulnerable. As I felt his hands move along my back and sides, there was a gentle exchange of trust, an unspoken acknowledgement of the comfort and curiosity we shared. He let his hands wander over the lace fabric, taking in every detail of his movements, both attentive and caring. I shifted slightly, bringing myself closer to him. Wrapping my arms around his shoulders with each movement felt like a reassurance that this moment was as special to him as it was to me. I could see the sincerity in his expression, the way he observed every small gesture, making each second feel treasured. The sense of comfort and trust between us deepened as we continued savoring each other's company in the stillness of the room. There was something beautiful about its simplicity. No need for grand gestures or words, just the genuine presence we shared. For it felt as though we were wrapped in our own world, free from the stresses of the day and the usual routines. Then suddenly a sound broke the calm. A doorbell chimed from the hallway. Loud and surprising. I tightened for a little. While in my head, Ethan, I murmured, a jolt of recognition hitting me as I realized he must have come home earlier than expected. We exchanged a look understanding. Instantly, what needed to be done, and we both quietly laughed at the timing of it all. I quickly straightened my clothes, brushing a hand over my hair to make sure everything was in place, while Daniel did the same, adjusting himself with a quick, amused look. In my direction, there was a playful, knowing glance. We all sat down to supper as if nothing had happened, telling tales about our days, laughing and enjoying one another's company beneath the surface. But I could still feel the warmth of our shared connection, a quiet understanding between Daniel and me that lingered, hinted something more. The next evening I was relaxing in my room, allowing the events of the day to fade away. It was a calm period form, something I looked forward to every evening. But while I lay there, lost in contemplation, I heard a soft knock on the door. I looked up surprised and then saw Daniel standing in the doorway. He had a look in his eyes that was both curious and excited, a spark of familiarity mixed with the thrill of the unexpected. He stepped into the room with a soft smile, shaking his head. SLL, as if he couldn't believe what he was about to say. Yesterday was insane, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, but filled with sincerity. I can't stop thinking about it. There was a pause, a beat where neither, and guided him closer. And as he settled next to me, there was a calmness in the way. We looked at each other, a sense of trust that made every moment feel relaxed and natural. He guided me with a gentle but assured touch, turning me so. My back pressed lightly against him. His movements were neither hurried nor hesitant. Every gesture felt intentional, as if he knew exactly what he wanted and how to communicate it without words. Could feel the warmth of his chest, close against me. His breath, stirring my hair, bringing a comforting sense of calm even as my own breathing grew on. Even the room seemed quieter than before, the sounds around us fading until there was only the gentle rhythm of our breaths and the steady beat of my heart. His hand rested on my shoulder for a moment, and the weight off it felt grounding, like an anchor that drew me fully. To this moment I closed my AAS, letting my senses take in every small detail. The faint scent of his cologne, the warmth that radiated from his skin, and the rustle of fabric as he moved. His presence was powerful yet comforting, making me feel both vulnerable and protected. A strange and wonderful paradox. I felt a surge of energy ripple through me, a mixture of anticipation and surrender. My breaths grew deeper and slow and drawn out as idri to keep myself composed. Yet there was something undeniably thrilling in feeling this, close with no barriers. Now allows his arm found its way around me, drawing me in closer still until every inch of space between us dissolved the steady rhythm. of his breath was soothing, as if he were creating a quiet world for just the two of us. A place where time slowed and every touch mattered. At first he moved with a softness. Licky, he was feeling it out. The rhythm, letting both of us adjust to the nervousness in my breath, caught a momentary shiver running through me. Our response, I could barely control it. It felt the warmth of his hand, my waist, the sensation delicate but electric, sparking every nerve as his fingers brushed my skin. There was a gentleness in his movements that made me feel seen, respected, and entirely alive. But then, with a slight shift, he changed. Pace moving with more purpose, I could feel him exhale as he grew more in sentience, if he decided to let down the careful control he'd held up to this point. A shiver spread through me as he held me. Close, hard breathing, mingling in the pace he set, was exhilarating, leaving no space for hesitation. Only an unspoken understanding of his movements matched my own responses in a perfect wordless conversation, with each movement drawing me deeper into the moment. I had been to keep my composure, but now I found myself breathing louder, letting goof restraint unable to hold back their response that built inside me. My heart pounded faster, the rhythm in sync with his own, until every sensation blurred together in a kind of focused intensity. I felt as though I were floating, as though time had lost meaning, and the only thing that mattered was this feeling, this connection. His hand at my waist tightened just slightly, a gesture that brought me back to the present, grounding me in the warmth and comfort who provided. I found myself surrendering, letting go of any lingering thoughts or worries, and just being in the moment with him as we found our rhythm. I realized how natural it felt to be close, to trusting him and letting him guide me. There was something unspoken. We had an unspoken agreement between us, and my breathing had become deep and steady. Though I could feel it hitch every now and again as he moved with greater haste, I felt my heartbeat echoing through if each beat was in perfect tune with his. He leaned in, his forehead brushing against my hair, and I could feel the warmth in his eyes, a softness that filled me with both serenity and excitement. Each breath seemed like a sapinto unknown land, yet I felt secure, because he made a space just for us when everything else melted away. I wanted to show my thanks for his tenderness, patience, and the way he seemed to know exactly what I needed without my having to say anything. As he hugged me tight, I felt utterly free. My heart felt like it was going to explode from the overpowering combination of feelings: exhilaration, warmth, comfort, and something deeper. A sense of belonging. Every was a comfort, a subtle promise. And as I let go of my final constraint, a sensation of calm came over me. The quick speed he picked matched the intensity of our feelings, and I realized I didn't need to hold back or be silent. I let myself fully enjoy it, giving in to the sensations, and for a brief period, everything else stopped. Matching once weaned, I took a few seconds to collect myself, feeling a peaceful, content warmth that persisted. Even as I stood up to begin the remainder of the evening, I walked to the bathroom to straighten my hair and clean up, giving myself a brief look in the mirror before walking to the kitchen to make supper. The familiar noises of slicing vegetables and the soft sizzle of the stove filled the air. I sat at the table, grounding myself in their routine of daily living, occasionally looking over my shoulder to see Daniel teeing up around the home. His typical calm presence contributed to the atmosphere of ease that pervaded the place. A little while later, my husband arrived home, his familiar footsteps proclaiming his presence as he stepped, and he greeted us with his customary kindness, patting Daniel on the shoulder and smiling softly at me. We all gathered down at the table and I served. The lunch felt a modest sense of pleasure, happy that everything looked perfect. As Wes started to dine, my husband turned to us and inquired about our day with his customary interest. Daniel spoke first, sharing a few examples from his studies, his face beaming as he detailed a particularly engaging conversation in his history class. Ismail feeling a sense of satisfaction in how passionately he talked and how real his joy was, and my husband listened, intently asking questions here and there, definitely engaged in the talk and curious about what Daniel had to say. Then it was my time, and I shared a bit about my own day at work. I told them about a new project I was handling, careful to keep things light and interesting. My husband has been nodding, giving me his full attention. And Danielle listened to a small smile, playing at the corners of his mouth. The meal felt cozy and warm, filled with familiar conversation, laughter, and the gentle hum of shared contentment. The thought stayed with me as we finished dinner and cleaned up together. Everyone working in their familiar role, quietly significant. It was a notion I kept near while I got ready for bed, and a faint grin crossed my lips as I fell asleep.